Hey Pack, it's Eric from WolfSteel Buildings, and we have a two-part segment video for everyone to enjoy. We'll have Anadela and Sarah explain metal building sizes, so it will be a two-part video, so stay tuned to get all the information you need regarding metal building sizes.
Okay, so welcome back, Pack. Anadela and Sarah here from WolfSteel Buildings, and in this video, we're going to be addressing the first step in your Texas metal building project, and that is, what size metal building do I need?
That's right. We do get a lot of calls and a lot of customers that do reach out that they do know that they need additional space for these buildings, but they just don't know what size or actually what they need.
Correct. So if you're in a similar position or you're, exploring various size options, in this video, that's what we're going to be doing, is we're going to be giving you insights on things to consider when you're trying to choose that building size for you, and also how this can impact your decisions.
And as always, guys, make sure that you guys like, share, subscribe, and we'll jump right into the video.
Let's go.
So let's dive into the basic guidance and understanding the dimensions, recommendations, and also to the typical vehicle size. I do want to let you guys know we are talking more about utility buildings, so example like garages, utility sheds, storage, nothing in regards to like residential.
Correct. So if you actually are looking for residential, like a residential living project or a commercial project, we highly recommend that you work with a licensed architect. The reason that is they have more familiarity with what is the IRC and the IBC. What those are is the International Residential Code and the International Business Code. Because they do have more knowledge into these kind of things, they will be able to better guide you through your process. Typically, when we have those type of projects, we'll work with the architect, we'll get all the information that you've already worked with them and kind of like, planned out your whole entire project, and then we take it from there. So that's typically what we would recommend. And
then, guys, when we're going into this video, just be sure and understand that we are referencing to like the industry, but also our personal experience with WolfSteel Building, how we build your projects.
That's correct. So let's get started. So when we say what metal building size do I need, again, most common question, especially for clients who are barely getting into it, they haven't done much research into what it is that they're looking at. Why is this important, Sarah? Like, why is this very, very important?
Well, the biggest things that are really important is we need to make sure that we ensure, your needs are met. Yeah, 100%. And then also, do you have enough space while saving on cost and just more things as well too. But those are the three basics right there for sure.
Correct. Before you even have to look at sizing and dimensions, one of the biggest things that you need to look for first is looking at your permitting and your HOA. You wouldn't think this would be something that affects, what size you get, but definitely does nowadays. So let's get into those first.
Do you have permits or HOA restrictions?
Correct. So a lot of Texas metal buildings nowadays are built without permits. And this is even though they may need to have permits. Permitting departments didn't really enforce it too much, even though we're seeing it more and more here in Texas. We've always said in our videos, if you kind of paid attention or watched some of our past videos, is we thought Texas was the wild, wild west. Definitely is in some parts, but in some parts now, more than ever, we're getting more and more permitting restrictions and HOAs.
Yeah, and it's important that you are aware of your city and county restrictions, and also to your HOA restrictions, because that's going to dictate like how big your building is going to be, what color building you get, or anything. Yeah. They're very strict, so it's very important that you have those things.
Correct. So we actually have some of the most common related restrictions that we see for metal buildings here in the state of Texas, because that is what we cover. And some of those are limit on the total square footage that you can build your building. So the overall size, the height, how tall your building can be, limit on the quantity of buildings that you have on your property. This can sometimes include your main home. Restrictions on setbacks, and that is all around. restrictions on the type of material you can use for your property, and also just being unable to build a building that you have, overall that you want.
Yeah, in some instances, none of this applies to, so you can build whatever building you want. We actually have an in-depth video in regards to permits and permitting, in which we'll actually include the link somewhere around here. I know it'll be around my head somewhere, but it is very, very, very important that you do understand how the industry works, and that is key.
Correct. So when we're talking about that, it's also really important for you to look at width, length, and height. So that's what we're gonna get into next.
What is width, length, and height?
Okay, so when we're talking about these three things, those are the basics for metal buildings. In the industry, this is how we typically communicate, I would say. Knowing these three things is really just essential to make sure that we're getting the correct size or measurements that you're looking to build.
No, 100%. And the width refers to the gable section, so the peaked area of your gable. Now, this is really important because the width is, number one, where your pricing is gonna be at. This is what determines how high your pricing is going to be. The reason why is because the width is going to need extra support if it is a lot more wider than, just a regular 20-foot wide or anything like that. But this is what determines a lot of your pricing and material. Now, the length is the side where all of your supports do land, so all your legs do land. So that is the length side on your building. So pretty much how long is your building, that's what they're referring to. And then the height is all the way from the bottom of your base rail up to your eaves. This is really important that you do know what that means, and that it's not all the way at the top of the peak of your roof, because this is really important for you to take in consideration what size doors you're wanting. So if you want a 10-foot by 10-foot door, you want to make sure that you at least have like a 12-foot, from the bottom of the base rail up to the eaves, not the peak. So that is what the height means on that part and what we see.
That's correct. So when we're talking with length and height, we're typically talking about dimensions from the outside to outside of the frame. So sometimes we'll have you have a 20-foot long building, but a 21-foot roof.
Yeah.
You'll sometimes see that on your order form or your quote form. That's very commonly seen.
Yeah, so that is true. This doesn't include the measurements of the sheet metal all the way around. Make sure to ask your builder, because each builder does build things differently.
That is correct. So in the industry, again, when we're talking width times length times height, one of the biggest common things that we hear is we typically want to use length times width times height. Even me, I've been in the industry for so long, and as I'm doing this video, I'm like, width times length times height. And the reason that is maybe because in school we're taught your typical width times length times height for you to do area base or all of those things that I'm sure I'm unlocking memories that we didn't know we had. But that's typically how things are referred to. But a lot of the times when you go and you ask for this, it can get really confusing because in the metal building industry, it's used with, because again, as Sarah mentioned, that is one of the biggest determining factors for your price. So that is the one that goes first, because that affects whether you're going to need maybe a thicker I-beam if we're talking red iron, or the rafter on the trussing, the commercial trussing for tubular. So those things are affected. So it's really important that you kind of always mention or know that we are talking in the industry width times length times height. And that way we can all be on the same page, because it would be really, really unfortunate to have those switched or mixed around, which your salesmen ask.
They do ask, and that's why it's really important that you do have that format when you're talking to your salesman or your builder, because there has been situations where, a customer is talking about the length, but they say it first before the width, and we actually quote it out wrong. So again, it's just important that you do know that format whenever you are, speaking with someone in construction.
That's correct.
That leads me to my next question. What square footage do I need?
That's correct. So sometimes customers will come to us with the dimensions already in mind, and sometimes they don't. They just say, hey, I just know that I need a project that gives me 1,200 square feet. 1,500 square feet. So this is another way that people use to determine what size they need.
And just so you guys know, the way that you determine the square footage is width times length. So if you have a 20-foot wide building by 30-foot long, you just push 20 times 30, and then that's your square footage.
I don't think you guys thought you guys were gonna get a math class, but but why do we need to know these kind of things?
The square footage tells you how much space you are gonna need inside of your building, and it's really important that you do know that. And the most important thing is to ask yourself, what are you gonna be using this building for? And also too, guys, plan for the future. That's the biggest thing. A lot of our buildings are built for like just, storage, garages, man caves, workshops, even workspaces. And the reason why I say make sure you're planning for the future is because we did have a client actually just build a normal building. He didn't think that was going to be anything crazy or he's going to put anything large in it. And in the future, he actually bought an RV and he let us know it won't fit in there. So we had to tear down the entire building and build a taller one for him. And it was a pretty penny. So just please make sure you're taking those things in consideration.
And that was in your old company?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's crazy, but I think we've referenced that multiple times here now at WolfSteel. One of the best ways for you to really visualize or to look at things, because sometimes we're very, very visual people, one of the best ways is really just sketching it. We've seen everything from on the back of a receipt, on the back of a napkin. You mentioned paper plates now.
Paper plate. We've got a picture of a paper plate.
Anything in reality for you to shoot us over, or whoever it is that you're working with, right? If you're not working with WolfSteel, shoot it over. Most of the time, it'll also help your salesperson really visualize what it is that you're needing. There's also websites that you can, utilize. We don't have a specific website, or we're not endorsing anyone in specific, but a quick Google search will get you really where you need to go.
100%. Another way you can do it, and I think a client has done it before, they let us know that just put up stakes where you're going to be placing the building, and then park your building between those, park your building. It's a late day, guys. Park your car between those stakes and actually even put your stuff that you're gonna be putting in that building between those 4 stakes. And then you'll actually start seeing how large your building's gonna be at that point and if you need more space or if you're like overkilling it. But just keep in mind though, whenever you are putting those stakes up and you're putting the stuff inside of the building, technically, make sure you're keeping about like 3 feet of maneuvering space around like the cars, the storage space, the storage stuff that you have in there, any toys that you have in there, because you don't want it so compact that you can't even get out of your car when you pull in.
That's correct. So this is kind of the old school way to do it. As you've mentioned, we've had multiple clients that have done it. We've had some client reviews videos, which will be linked up above and in the description down below, where customers have said, hey, that's what I did. I kind of moved my car around and then I adjusted it because what if I wanted to park this here? So that's kind of a good way to do it. One thing is to remember, and we mentioned it earlier, that when we're talking measurements in the industry, we're talking outside to outside for framing dimensions. So what do we typically mean by that is you need to always consider the space that you're going to lose with your framing members. And this can range depending on if you have, what type of building you have, if you have a red iron or a tubular. So WolfSteel Buildings offers both, but if you're searching or you're working with a company that handles either or, always make sure that you kind of know how big those rafters are going to be. For our red iron buildings, those I-beams can be anywhere between 6 inches to 20 inches, really just depends on your project, maybe even more.
Yeah.
And then there's also like the tapered styles. There's different things that kind of affect it. For WolfSteel, once you reach over 13 feet tall, you're definitely getting into those ladder leg styles, and even just a little bit, I think 12 is double leg. So those are things to definitely take into consideration because you're losing interior space at that time, or even if you're finishing out, like you are working with an architect, finishing those kind of things out.
Yeah, and also too, guys, here at WolfSteel, we actually train our teammates based off of the cars, off the parking lot size. So for example, a typical parking lot, like section size is 9 foot wide by 18 foot long. And now if you're trying to park 2 cars in a garage, minimum space is an 18 by 20. But you want to keep
Tight fit.
Yeah, you want to, that's literally you parking it and then not getting out. So you want to make sure that whenever you park your car and you open your door, you're not smacking into your wall or you're not smacking into the next car that you're parked next to. I bet that's not going to be a good conversation with your wife or your husband if you hit their car or anything like that. So we do recommend that whenever you have that, we recommend a 24 by 25. that's why we do give that extra space for you to be comfortable to open a door, open, you know, your walk-in door, and not feel like you're going to have to, you know, smack something.
Be cautious around
Exactly.
around your building.
Exactly.
That's correct. So that's typically what we call, again, when we train new salesmen or anyone who decides to come join the WolfSteel team. That's how we train them. It's with the parking lot tip. That's one of the biggest things, and it helps us also to really help you guys as clients visualize what it is that you're getting, because sometimes, again, you don't know the size, but you say, I want a 2-car garage. So
yeah.
those are things that have helped us, but also another thing to always consider is your height. You know, selecting a meadow building, we know is not easy. We know it's an investment for sure, especially because you're adding onto your property.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that you should be taking into consideration.